Hello, welcome to Northwoods Renaissance. Well, you've been farting around, trying to figure out if you want the full-size German Shepherd or the smaller, more manageable dog who isn't going to poop nearly as much in the yard but doesn't have that wow factor that you're looking for in an animal. And if you're going to go with the wood frame house with the fake log siding, or if you're going to go with the actual log cabin, and there's a whole nother maintenance nightmare. I have been getting together all the information I can about what you see here before you. So, without further ado, let's start left to right. Right here, we've got an Army Achievement Medal, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. That's just kind of some window dressing. We've got the 45 ACP, which is the round that this venerable beauty takes. We've got a 7-round magazine. This is a stainless aftermarket made by Ruger. And here we have what's going to be my pointer in a few seconds, and this is the NRA ILA. Don't Step on Snake, commemorative knife given to me by my grandfather after the 2017 watermelon hunt. And finally, the reason we're here, the Essex Arms frame, stainless steel, 779 series slide, and 779 barrel. There you can see the Essex Arms roll mark, 1911. I've wanted a 1911 since I got my first pistol. In fact, I had wanted to pick it up for my first because we've got a 10-round magazine limit here in Hawaii. So a Glock 17 with a 17-round capacity and neutered magazines didn't make a lot of sense. However, as I mentioned in my Glock 17 video, I was able to get the Glock 17 at cost, and it turned out to be a neat purchase with the fishgill serrations and the RTF2 grip. So I certainly don't regret that, but the 1911 would have to wait for years to come. Alright, fast forward to 2017. My grandfather and I were hanging out in the Northwoods on vacation, and our goal, of course, was hunting the elusive watermelon. We didn't have any tags for Thai watermelons. We were only able to get the full size. You know, hunter's choice would be nice, but you know, you make do with what you got. We'll be honest, we were novice watermelon hunters, so we're trying out a number of calibers. The 45 Colt with the Taurus Judge, as well as the shot shells. We had the two kinds of 9mm, the Glock 26 and the Glock 17. I believe there was an AK-47 and a Mossberg 930 in the mix as well. But my grandfather brought us his trusty sidearm in case of, you know, if we ran into a mother watermelon and she was with her little saplings, you know, my buds, I guess you'd call them. And if she attacked us, you need a sturdy sidearm, and this was the one he brought along. And I had inquired about it, and my inquiries led me to him telling about going to Shields All Sports and attempting to get the pistol appraised. Let's make sure this thing's clear while we're playing with it, right? No, not really playing. You get the idea. And she's clear. Safety's on. Anyway, he informed me that Shields All Sports offered him about $180 for it. Said Essex was not a reputable company, and that was the best they could do. Well, of course, my ears perked up. You know, $180 for a fully functional 1911, and I wasn't too concerned about cosmetics. And if it belonged to my grandfather, that certainly increased its value to me, right? So I proceeded to make him an offer, which he rebuffed, and said if I wanted it, I could have it. Grandpa and I successfully concluded the watermelon hunt. We had a good clean kill, and unfortunately we did select the wrong caliber with the Mossberg 930 and the 12-gauge slug, and we weren't able to salvage a lot of the meat. So we're hoping to correct that in future watermelon hunts, but that's neither here nor there. With the hunt concluded, I had a little free time on the parents' farm, and I thought I would take this thing out for a spin and give it a shot. So I have a AR-500 silhouette target set up to 25 yards, and I loaded up a magazine. I think it was Blazer brass, and squared up on the sights. Now you can see these are the classic GI blade sights, and they are not that easy to line up. So between questionable manufacturer and difficult sights, my expectations were fairly low for my accuracy. After unloading the magazine on silhouette target, I was pleasantly surprised. It seemed to have a really smooth trigger, and the accuracy was quite good. I was able to get all the shots on target, and in spite of the sights, and I'm sure, I'm accustomed more to 9mm and 22, so I'm expecting to flinch with the classic hand cannon like this, and it all went surprisingly well, and that got me thinking. So I thought I'd do a little more homework on this guy and see what I could come up with. So the first thing I did was got online and tried to figure out the serial number. And I looked it up, and it turns out the SS is for stainless steel, and while the steel models had lots of problems, you can see some casting errors in this and some dings and such, but they had solved a lot of their alignment on the slide problems, and that contributed to it being a much better pistol. So already we were ahead of the game where I thought we would be. The next clue about this pistol was the grips. I investigated the logo, and I said, fudge, Pachmayr. So these were sold in the 70s. They're rubberized, and they've held up surprisingly well, all things considered. You can see a little ripping in the rubber there, but these were kind of the hot ticket back in the day. And another thing I noticed in my research, the serial number, manufacturer number, barrel number, and the slide number are all different. And I thought, what could that possibly mean? Now, bear with me here, because good luck looking up parts numbers from 1970s and earlier era 1911s, right? But, get your Afghan, your rocking chair, and get ready for me to spin a yarn. As it turns out, Essex doesn't make slides or barrels, so this number here, 7790314, and on the barrel, it's a little rough, but 7791193. Turns out those are military stock numbers from yesteryear. And the first source I consulted just said those were the regular stock numbers for just surplus replacement parts. And later on, someone said that that was not the case, and that these were produced to accurize the service pistols for the national shooting teams. And was some confusion. Again, like I said, try and track down information on old surplus parts, right? Some confusion that it was just the Air Force or the Coast Guard for their shooting team, but eventually it was concluded, I believe, to everyone's satisfaction, that this slide, this barrel, were surplus parts originally intended for match shooting. And apparently there's other match grade barrels made today that are better, but these are an interesting piece of history. And then I noticed there was no manufacturer marking on the slide, so I looked that up, and lo and behold, that's a Colt manufacturer, and there are some others. Now what is peculiar about this is most of them had the higher profile sights and the adjustable rear sights, whereas these are the fixed. I could drift them. You can see it's right in the notch there and centered, and surprisingly right on. So that is how I got a peculiar, surprisingly accurate piece of history. So, I mean, the only thing left to do is shoot it, right? Let's go take it to the range. Well, for the exceedingly curious, that leaves just a few loose ends to tie up. First off, what series is it? It doesn't appear to have a whole lot of similarities with the Series 70, although it does have one. As you can see in the A1 style, it's got the rounded mainspring housing and the relief cut, here the trigger guard, short trigger, safety, slightly extended beaver tail of the era. But the one Series 70 feature it does have is the hammer hooks that allow for that kind of half-cocked phase at the beginning of the hammer pull. And the bushing at the front is the solid bushing from the A1 series. And finally, the medal that I have here is an Army Achievement Medal, and obviously the 1911 was a service pistol in general, although not this one in particular. Although, like I said, the slide and barrel were surplus parts. And I earned that Army Achievement Medal at Fort McCoy. And if you've listened to the Intro to Challenge Coins video, I talk about having a 203 grenade launcher and flares during a defense. And it was the very same night that I got my first challenge coin that I was written up for the commendation. So there you have it, the 1911 A2 Essex frame, stainless steel, steel slide, Colt, and Packmeyer grips.